Hey there, my name is Joaquin Melada, and I'm the host of the AI Digest podcast. With me today is Christine Haskell. Haskell? Has-
Haskell.
Haskell. Uh, Today we're going to be talking about two views of AI, acceleration versus stewardship. And I'm going to leave it to Christine to kind of tell us a little bit about who she is, what she's done, and some of the bodies of work that may give a little preview and hints on what we're going to be talking about today.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm an educator, a researcher, and an author. I'm at the intersection of data leadership, governance, and innovation. I have about 30 years in the technology space, including leadership roles at Microsoft, Starbucks, and Salesforce. And I'm at the intersection of data strategy, ethics, and organizational transformation. I've taught grad school for about 9 years at Washington State University Carson School of Business at the EMBA course level, and I've written a few books on the topic, and I do research and edit journals, academic journals, and consult. So that's what I do right now, and I'm in Seattle.
When we initially had exchanged communications via LinkedIn, we talked about where should we narrow down the focus of this discussion, and you shared a bit of an abstract around this thing of two views of AI. And in your career trajectory, you've been a director at a very high level. You've managed change across the adoption of technologies, digital transformation efforts. So I would love it if you can kind of define the range, the context of what this title, what the presentation, what the conversation is going to be about.
Well, it stemmed from a lecture that I went to, where I heard, on one side was the president of a large company giving kind of a ethics washing talk on the AI hype, and on the other was a criminology researcher kind of giving a cautionary tale. And I wrote this manifesto of sort of these dueling views, around the conversation that's happening on LinkedIn, the conversation that's happening in the news, um, to help people kind of unpack the rhetoric that they are confronted with on and barraged with sort of on a daily basis, so that they're not picking up what's laid down in front of them at face value, that they understand kind of how to decode it and the underlying tenets that are kind of underneath it, because people are too quick to kind of pick up the personal responsibility for some of these larger companies. Um, there's just the consumption responsibility, um, and I saw it happen in the room, and I was just so shocked at the reaction across the room that I felt like I just felt compelled to do something about it. So that's where that energy and that initiative came from.
I appreciate you providing a level of media literacy training or discernment around how to judge, pick, and weight these ideas that are kind of coming in. I mean, it's a pendulum, right? Like in the beginning, it was, oh my God, the next big thing, the next big thing. How many next big things are you going to get in a series of several weeks, right? And then from this is going to totally change the world, it went to this can't even spell strawberry or banana properly. Uh, and now it's back to like um, anti-hype, anti-hype. So it's like, oh, everybody's saying this isn't working to this degree, but it actually has utility. So we can see the pendulum swinging both ways of like this polarization of it's the answer to everything, it's the answer to nothing, and it's going to go nowhere. But there's a nuanced graded world that we have to be stepping through to evaluate which directions to pay attention to.
Right. Yeah, I think there's always going to be the answer's always in the middle somewhere. And it doesn't matter in what thicket we find ourselves, whether it's politics, whether it's religion. I mean, any kind of challenging debate, the answer is always going to be kind of wandering the middle. So I think when you centered me on, looking at some of those vocabulary words, initially I thought it was sort of a trick question. I had this moment of like, we're starting off with the easy stuff, right? And like the question of what's an institution, for example. When we say what's an institution, it's like they're these solid, noble things like a university or a bank or a government, right? We all know what those are because they're solid. But half the time they behave like slightly chaotic group of projects where somehow the least prepared person got editing rights, right? And they kind of have no core all of a sudden. And so, formally an institution is just a long-term agreement when you think about it, about who gets to decide what, with what resources, under what conditions. And it's a social technology for coordinating people at scale. I mean, think about that. It's just an agreement, which is really an ethereal thing. It's not the it's not the that solid stone structure that we take for granted, right? So informally, it's who actually gets to say no, whose email gets answered, and who pays when something breaks. On the website, you see org charts, those tangible things and values, but in real life, you see habits and norms and side deals and conference rooms. And that gap between the website and the lived experience is where governance actually lives. I'm
enamored by your explanation so far. I'm gonna have to hold on to my seat as we continue the conversation because I might just fly out of my room. Yeah, I mean, whenever I speak to anybody, I always view it through the lens of contractual obligation. As boring as that may seem, we're always kind of merging worlds with people in a conversation. We have we imply things, we assume things, and we have this this idea, this thing that we take for granted that we share the same representation of the world. But it's not true. We don't have the same identity. We don't have the same belief system, but we join organizations that bind us together in natural and unnatural ways to survive. It's just the way that we live in this kind of society. But yeah, can you maybe abstract a little bit more on what is an organization? Because I think the institution definition was fabulous, but an organization I think is a little bit more of a gooier, more broader kind of view of these things.
Well, like say more, like what more about what more about?
Well, an organization has a purpose, and you said that there's agreements on how decisions are made and resources are used, and who agrees, disagrees, how governance takes place. So, yeah,
I mean, yeah, you can look at AI companies, for example, and you can see the institution and who is empowered to ship those models and who can say no and who harms don't show up in the room. And that's the real organization, not the values slide that they show on the onboarding meeting.
Right. How do you penetrate that facade? How do you peel the mask?
Well, that's the question around, or that's where we ask the question, why do we need policies and rules, right? And where you were kind of headed towards contracting and this like kind of common definitions and things. And it's the natural order of things when we get into data governance, for example, and on every organization's maturity journey, they try to nail down definitions. And you were just heading there from a contractual standpoint, we join organizations and we don't share the common assumptions. And that's true with a group of two people. You just get married with somebody and like you try to share a common operational definition of a clean bathroom and you're in for a rude awakening, right? Like but you just get more than one person together, and you need to start sharing a world, and that's just the nature of human beings. And so it's the same with organizations. You get more than one person in a room, and you start kind of, okay, we need an operational definition of what customer means. Like that is the bane of everyone's or every organization's existence. They don't have a common definition of customer because
Okay.
no
Yeah.
no discipline looks at it the same.
I like where this conversation is going. I think, if we could go a little bit more explicitly into policies, you mentioned people get jammed into an organization. There's a structure of power, but that behavior, that structure is regulated, right? I mean, policies and rules, whatever guidelines. Uh, we live in a Russian doll system of regulation, from federal mandates to state level mandates to organizational, cultural, social, financial mandates, all the way down to, hey, this is the standard operating procedure for how you fulfill your job. So,
Right.
can you talk a little bit about these policies and what kind of mechanism they fulfill in an
Yeah.
organization?
I mean, I'll talk about them broadly, right? So policies and rules are the story an institution tells about what good behavior looks like, right?
Why stories? Is that
Because
just
it is a story.
okay?
So it's supposed to be a shared floor, right? A shared experience that we agree. Let's just use GDPR as an example. That is any regulation. I don't care what it is. It is the it is what a the common definition of clean bathroom, clean kitchen, because those are what most couples fight about, right? The dishwasher and the toilet. And it's the same with privacy and security. We're going to fight around customer privacy and security. And so they're supposed to be a shared experience. And I love the example of the Ritz. I think it's the Ritz hotel. Whatever institution has a definition of perfection. I think it's the Ritz hotel in terms of how they make a bed, and they define it, like their hospital corners, and you can bounce a corner, and like the way they do their sheets, and there's that specific way that they make their beds, and no other hotel does it like that, right? And so that's a rule and a story around how they make their beds, right? So there's supposed to be a shared experience that all staff has around how that bed is made, and with GDPR, how that customer is protected, how that citizen is protected. So what's allowed, what's out of bounds, and what happens if we cross the line. Does that make sense? And so without that, everything runs on personality, charisma, favors, and whoever's
Politics.
loudest. Yeah,
Politics.
yeah, right. Whoever's loudest and whoever's highest paid wins. And without that, in theory, people can say, hey, this is just my opinion. This breaks what we agreed to. And that's the moment where accountability becomes possible, assuming anyone is listening to that, right? So that's why I call it a story, because it ultimately, we're sharing a story or an
This is the
agreement.
ideal outcome. This is the
Yeah,
conformance. This is the acceptance criteria. Whether there's enforcement mechanisms or not, that's a separate concern,
I'm
right?
looking at it like an anthropologist.
Okay.
I'm a social scientist, right? So I'm looking at it like an anthropologist. A regulation is a kind of story that we're buying into, that has metrics, that has accountability measures, that has uh, um, a third fence of death, accountabilities and some kind of consequences, right? Penalties if we step over the line. And it's the same with any other societal boundary.
Rewards and punishments.
Yeah, right.
So, how are these activities usually monitored for performance, and then how are these stories measured for performance and how do people figure out how to tune and improve the story to raise quality, raise awareness, raise education, have a better outcome?
So, most organizations will monitor what's easy to count, right? Like in a dashboard, and not necessarily what's important. And so you get these dashboards that are full of like how many tickets did we close, and how fast did we ship or launch a product, and absolutely nothing about did we make a sane decision or do people still trust us. And it's like trying to judge a restaurant only by how quickly plates got out the kitchen and not asking was the food actually cooked. In with AI, that's how you end up with beautiful performance charts and a model that quietly discriminates against whole factions of people in the background. You've got a growth curve. Literally, they have a growth curve that's going like this, but there's like fake facial recognition problems and discrimination issues and bias built into the algorithms and like all kinds of flaws that we kind of know about and argue about in the background. But look at that growth curve. We love growth curves, right? It makes us feel good about ourselves and kind of calms us down.
How do you negotiate between those short-term motivations of, I would just want to get my quarterly bonus, dude. I don't want to have to deal with long-term rectifications of, I don't want to invest in the future outcomes. I don't want to train my staff. I just want my bonus. How do you
Well,
negotiate the short-term versus the long-term quality?
well, that's short term versus long term is sort of the dilemma of every leader, right? And that's been going on for decades. And the problem with kind of rigid metrics is that metrics are like gravity; they quietly pull behavior toward them. And the danger is when a metric becomes the mission, and people start serving the number instead of the responsibility behind it. And I've seen this firsthand. I mean, I early in my career, I spent 6 months partnering with the VP of product to build a careful pricing strategy. And there was a ton of analysis behind it and customer input. I mean, everything. And a week before we present to the CEO, and he walks in and he looks at it and arbitrarily like puts pricing on all the product models, and it's like, here's my number, and there's no data. It's just gut. And we roll it out, and within 3 months, we have to lay off the entire division. And the metric we ended up serving wasn't, is this fair or sustainable? It was, does this match this person's instinct? And that happens when governance is optional and metrics are unquestioned. And it's a common problem in kind of founder. It's kind of a well documented founder syndrome. It happens in startups. It's a family business. It's kind of a well documented problem. But when metrics become a proxy, and they become when it's just too rigid a number, and the behavior is no longer, the meaning has been lost behind it. It ceases to serve its purpose.
Well, I think I didn't ask you a question around that in preparation for this conversation, but I do think about the evolution of an organization as it grows from an individual, where the priority is survivability, just imposing your will and doing whatever is required to get things done so something can survive. And then the acquisition of, additional employees, contractors, partners, whatever you want to call it, things start to change for the better and for the worse in different ways, of course. There's trade-offs to having a group of people that carry an idea forward to do things beyond the capacity of an individual, but then that introduces politics, period. How do you make sure that a will, a mission, whatever is on the plaque of the building is reflected within the building? I think that's where the policies and things come into play, right? Like, what is acceptable standards for how we make decisions? What is the mission of this organization? and how can we merge the high level with the actual day-to-day implementation? No?
Well, I think you're talking about flexibility.
Evolution of an organization's governance based on how big and complex it is.
Well, I think it's about when you're talking about scale, which is I think is what you're addressing, the how do I adjust for an organization's scale, right? That's kind of how I'm paraphrasing. Um, and I would look at how people actually behave. Like when I go into an organization, regardless of its size, I look at it like an anthropologist. I look at it like it's a small village and how people actually behave, not how they wished they behaved, because they speak in the language of how they wish they behaved. And so where are they already using good judgment? And where are they working around the system because it doesn't fit their reality? And governance should amplify that intelligence and not punish it. And when you literally design pause into the system and not giant bureaucratic delays, like small intentional checkpoints, like who gets harmed if we're wrong? Does this match the values we love to print on posters? If this hits the front page, can we explain it without euphemisms? In AI, that looks like multidisciplinary reviews or explicit stop pause authority or value, kind of value checks that sit next to accuracy charts, not buried 5 tabs over. Right? It's just small little things. That I think is how you build it into scale, to build the intentionality, to build integrity into scale. Because it wouldn't slow them down that much to do that. It's if we have the creativity to think about the can we, which is always a yes, right? And the should we, which is always bypassed, if you understand where I'm headed with that, right? We should have the moral creativity to think through the answers of, if this is going to do harm, and I'm thinking through the meta glasses as an example, because I wrote a piece on that around, and correct me if I'm rambling, because I have a tendency to do that, but like we've been conditioned for a very long time through pop culture, through the default settings of our devices, right? For a very long time, these default settings and the boundaries of our pop culture have been moving, encroaching further along into our right.
They impose ideas into the way that
Yeah.
that encode our belief system and the frame in which we view the world of what's good or bad. Yeah.
Right. So I talk about in the meta piece, the dorm room, I talk about how, I kind of use this idea of like Howard Hughes films were sort of conditioning us to think about women's rights, right? Like the girl was sort of used as the prop line, and in the male fantasy. And now we have these glasses that are bringing that to life. Like, are her boundaries still? Because the default settings are of these glasses kind of make it such that someone's boundaries are instantly kind of violated. And the default settings of these glasses now can be taken into any domain.
Yeah, people hide the fact that they have cameras on them, and they just go into places that are regulated by privacy restrictions, like hospitals, schools with children, of course. But I'm just
so you can go to the gym and bring you could go to the gym. People are going to the gym and bringing their
cameras,
their phones with a camera, and now you can just bring your glasses in there, and that's in a sauna. And there's no signs not to do that yet. So think about the implications there of being going into a gym and kind of people seeing you in your gymness and then in your sauna-ness. And, what lawsuits is that gonna, and we have to wait for the lawsuits, right? Because we're in lawsuit land for this to happen. And because we're not in another country where we're thinking more preventatively, right? So if we were to pause and use our moral creativity to think ahead of the harm that could happen, that would be considered anti-innovation here. That would be like I'm instantly here to block your
You're a
innovation.
deterrent. You're a
I'm a
speed bump.
deterrent. Yeah,
You're killing the party, man.
I'm
Come
killing
on.
the party. Like I'm harsh and the mellow. And the thing is, I'm not like I'm very pro tech. I come from tech. I'm very pro tech. I am pro the use of AI, responsibly use of AI. But that responsible bit is the bit on the brake pedal that like the techno optimists kind of can't tolerate. But I think moral creativity actually brings about higher levels of innovation. That is a challenge to that brings, I think, an interesting level of challenge to the discussion that could actually bring better product.
I just want to say, to your previous point of rambling on, I feel like I'm swimming in an ocean and I don't have to breathe. I'm just able to co-explore this space with you, and I'm really grateful. This is oxygen. Everything you're saying is super interesting. It's like really rich broth. So keep talking. I'm really enjoying the conversation. Okay, I don't know what other examples to give you, but this is really, really interesting to me. Um,
Good. Oh, look good.
and you're tackling parts from your unique perspective that I never would have even thought about bringing up to like learn more about, and I really appreciate that as well. It shows the depth of your knowledge, expertise, considerations, and the way that you're viewing how to actually affect change positively and effectively. I mean, you're not killing the buzz, man. You're actually slowing things down so that you don't chop somebody's head off, and then the whole party needs to get shut down. You're making sure people are staying hydrated so that somebody doesn't get taken out for alcohol poisoning. I mean,
Yeah.
the
Well,
party
it's
can go on, but we still need to eat and drink water and have thresholds for safety, right? It just makes
yeah. I
things
mean,
go faster.
it is. I think it's the voice to help the company not get sued and the people to not get harmed. Right. It's the I'm trying to be that voice for both, and it's uh, I am not trying to stop the innovation train. So it's it's a dicey road to walk, right?
I had to notice that there were some comments coming in. I usually,
Yeah.
when I get like immersed, when I get glued to the screen because the conversation is so interesting, I forget. But
Okay.
Olivia Heslinga, hey, how you doing? She's mentioning up the Meta and Ray-Ban collaboration. I think that's what we were hinting to. But more broadly, anybody could put cameras on eyeglasses or any kind of device that is seemingly um innocent, right? Like you could put it on a camera on your wallet anywhere, and we could be spying on each other without consent. And then yeah, it's not, I mean, it's not just Meta. I mean, CVS got in trouble for like you said, computer vision systems that check which customers are likely to have negative behavior and call the cops on them preemptively or accuse them of theft. They got in trouble because they had data systems that reinforce negative stereotypes, and they were what's the word? Enforcing the wrong rule, punishing the wrong kind of people.
Hmm.
And now Niels van der Linden, he put better products should be defined wider than what makes shareholders more money. Of course, products exist in an ecosystem where it provides utility to people, but also it needs to be socially, environmentally, culturally responsible, right? I mean, an organization does not exist in a vacuum. It's gonna bleed and impact the greater whole, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And I think there was I don't know who saw it, but Adolescence was a really good program if you haven't seen it. It was a 4 episode series. I think it's on Netflix. I'll pop the. Well, I did a. I can't. I don't know if I can join the chat. I can't. I don't think I can join it.
Put the link, and I'll put it in the comments so that we could share it with the broader.
Here's the thing. My newsletter's got a bunch of pieces. The Facebook piece is on there, but this default piece is on there. It's originally the premise is about a murder, but it's really not about the murder. It's about I think it's about the default settings in social media and what we can do about them. So I wrote the piece around more from, I think, from an empowerment standpoint on all the roles related to governance, from faculty to policymakers to the hardware and software manufacturers to citizens to parents, that we need to be waking up around what these default settings are and how we can reset them and what they mean, and that we need to have more of a voice in the settings themselves. But yeah, we need to be taking our data back, right, in a lot of ways. And so we can't be complicit in the use anymore, right? The business incentives of these products are not designed for societal health. They're designed for return on investment. And so there needs to be some kind of safety settings that we figure out, right? If we're gonna regulate anti-regulations, we need to figure out how to protect ourselves. What are the seatbelt functions of this thing?
Yeah, I was wondering this stuff as well. And maybe you can shed some light on what your thoughts are with this. There are mechanisms that regulate behavior top to bottom. So whoever has the authority over the poor serf individual, what are the mechanisms that we can invoke? What are the levers or pulleys that we can, or the buttons we can press to push back, or at least say this regulation is harmful and we need to reconsider how to adapt this mechanism so it takes into consideration this edge case. Like a law is imposed from the government, someone is impacted by it unfairly, they go to the government, then they go through the court system, they make their case, and then there's an amendment made in the law. How is that mechanism play in an organization? How have you seen that like productively used to create a more human-centered experience for people? I'm not sure if I'm just waffling.
Well, I'm not sure specifically what you're asking, other than what can we do. I think that's what you're asking, is what can we do?
Yeah, what kind of mechanisms exist? What can we do? I think that's
well, the Algorithmic Justice League, I think, is a great organization to follow, and they're taking a very proactive approach in monitoring a lot of what you're asking. There's no silver bullet right now in terms of what can we do. Gary Marcus is a great researcher to follow, who's been alone in his fight, I think, up until now. He really has literally stood alone in standing against the big nine AI companies, in terms of the irresponsibility of the LLMs and what AI has been doing and monitoring and the surveillance of it, and has been proven right in a lot of his theories. And And he wrote a really great book. I can't find it right now, but it's called The Taming of Silicon Valley, which is a really good read, and much of it is proven true. And he does talk about that the onus will be on us as individuals to be remaining aware of what is happening. So awareness is key. I'm beginning to write about it in this manifesto, and sort of kind of as I'm unpacking and kind of decoding this rhetoric, I'm heading there as well in terms of the what can we do message. And I'm trying to get there myself, right? It's a journey, because it's all happening in real time. And they're, they're in a race. These companies are in a race to regulate anti-regulation. And as they unregulate things, what is it that we can do? And we're trying to figure that out. And so the Justice League is one organization, and Gary is one researcher. I'm certainly someone, but there's nothing's super concentrated right now. So it's a very evolving space. But I think it's, what did I just say? The anti
algorithm,
suggestive. Yeah. I'm sorry, my memories. But that's a really great organization. And they've got a ton of really great information. And I know that they're tracking a lot of that legislation closely, in terms of the what can we do. But I'm doing it from a stewardship standpoint. But there's just not a lot of very constructive actions out there right now.
It's like, put your suggestions in the box, and if we get to it, we'll let you know. If at all.
No, right? but the manifesto is where I'm trying to concentrate it. Mm-hmm. Honestly, that to me is my growing. That's my little sticker bush of where I'm trying to concentrate that effort. And I'll be putting those organizations there, the Anti-Arrhythmic Drug Justice League and Marcus's efforts and the Stewardship for the 99%. Like, I'm trying to coalesce that there. And I'm on the hunt for that.
Olivia Heslinga in the comments just put better whistleblowing and lower judicial fees for citizens to be empowered. I mean, that
she's actually onto something. I just posted a tenet against the manifesto that whistleblowing, because the judicial fees, like, I think they're trying to punish whistleblowing, and that whistleblowing has actually graduated into class actions like the walkouts and the marches, and it's because it's safer and it's more effective, and there's this "they can't fire all of us" mentality. And if you go to my page, the manifesto, I think it's Tenet 2, that I just posted last week. There's this trend of whistleblowing, the individual standing up and getting shot is sort of, that's past.
Right now it's a collective force.
It's more of a collective force now. And I found that to be an interesting trend. And I put that in the thing. For you to share. There's a summary at the bottom of this manifesto here where I'm collecting the tenets that I'm, or maybe it's the top. Oh shucks, I'll add it. I'll add it. I'll add the summary. But there's a I'm adding I put the tenets there. The tenet 2 is the whistleblower one. If you go to my newsletter page, and it was when I was doing the research for it, it was just an interesting, it's happening in Spain, it's happening in Italy. the Hollywood strikes. It's worldwide. It's becoming a bigger trend, and I found that to be an interesting
Phenomenon, social phenomenon.
yeah, it was an interesting phenomenon. Germany, South Korea, Kenya. It was just an interesting phenomenon because as a I mean I'm in my early 50s and I'm like, God, not another march. Like it just seemed I'm like, God, this isn't where is this going, right?
Yeah.
And because I remember when the privacy lawsuit from Cambridge Analytica came out with a single whistleblower, and then she basically got shot and moved on and never heard from her again. And then the Google walkout happened, and then another one happened, and then we had the Uber walkout thing happen in the riot, and then there was another thing happen, and then another one, and then another one. But they forced amendments in the governance, like the Timmett one in the Google one forced changes in how Google was approaching their rollout. Ethics is branding and ethics is veto and all that. And so I'm like, well, it didn't affect the whistleblower, didn't affect the Analytica thing because they still shared third-party data, and that didn't change anything. And people,
I'm so hesitant to kind of judge social media, because we wouldn't be here without it. You and I having a conversation, connected by someone who we commonly know, that I didn't know, that I came into knowing by somebody else. So you're a third hop away from me socially, that I would have never interacted with you had we not had a common space to kind of share and come together around shared beliefs, interests, whatever. There are echo chambers, but I think that is an interesting side effect of these social media
platforms. That's how it's supposed to work. That was how it was always supposed to work. Back in the 90s, that was how it was supposed to work. And when we went into this space in the 90s, in 95, when I was doing Yahoo, that was the vision. But it was so naive, and it was so like we were going to change the world, and it was so fresh. I mean, I'm getting shivers just talking about it. Like it was so like innocent. And when back in 2000, when you saw those levers being literally manipulated towards negativity, and the choice,
polarization,
that there was a choice for negativity, which was kind of out of the realm of what we were, even considering, right?
It perverted the vision. It perverted
and willfully promoting it, which was, given the choice, we would never have done that. It's like, why would you, So it sort of defies, like, none of us could really wrap our heads around it. So when we go back to what brought us into this space, and that we have more opportunity, like you just said, to come together, we should be flexing these platforms while we still have them, for the original intent that they were put there, right? Olivia's putting an invitation out there, and we should be. This is what it was meant to bring. It was meant to bring us together, right? It was meant to promote this kind of goodwill and generate this kind of fabric. And this is the kind of ethos that it was meant to propagate. So it and people made friends and literally got married and developed hobbies and found friends and connections and had amazing stories. And it still happens.
Before we started the recording, the live interaction, we spoke about how did I come into the space or doing some of these things, and coming into this idea of community building, it was a flat word. because community
Yeah.
is like, okay, people come together, you share food, you talk, and something happens, but there is a culture building. You can deliberately, consciously develop people to have a transformative experience. Education is a transformative experience, right?
Can be.
Building a support system for people can be a transformative experience. So
Yeah, it can be. It has potential to be. I mean, I remember we would go to these, it's culture. It's the culture that like you're developing a culture, right? Through how you curate and who you bring together and the type of conversations um, that you're cultivating. And like you're not bringing influencers together. That's a choice, right? I'm not talking off a script. That's a choice. And that, well, and it attracts a certain type of audience, and that's a choice.
right.
And all those choices are building a brand and building a different kind of following. And that feels more 90s to me than what's happening today with the sort of influencer streak, right? The sort of TikTok.
An industrialized process.
Yeah,
Everything's a sausage. Everything's
yeah.
homogenized.
It doesn't feel sausage, and so for me, it doesn't feel like there's the culture that we had, when we went to these like forced. Um, did you watch Severance?
No.
Oh my God, you have to. You have to. Did anyone on the thing see Severance? Severance is like pure gold. Severance is like my corporate experience written out for
TV
me.
show or a movie?
It's on Apple. It's a series.
Okay.
And like it nothing typifies the HR space than Severance. It's like forced. They have like this forced, I forget what they call it. It's like forced morale time.
Ugh.
And it reminded me of, some of the early Microsoft time. Like we were in startups, right? And there's a culture in startups where you're working really hard, and it was the anti-corporation experience. So we weren't wearing dry cleaning, and we were kind of wearing like this, and you brought your dog to work, and you it was just quirky and fun,
Folksy, right? Like you come as you
yeah,
are and you blend together.
come as you are, but you had to be really smart, and there were no dull people, and like everyone was super smart, and you stayed until 10 o'clock because part of it was because you just loved it, and you loved the people, and you loved the work, and you really were changing things. Like it was new because the internet was new, your job was new, your job title was new, everything was new.
Right.
And it had never been done before, and your work had a proximity to customers that had never been had before.
Yeah,
Millions of people,
like you're co-sculpting this thing.
yeah, millions of people were seeing your work in ways that, like, if you had gone to Procter and Gamble, you would never have had that proximity to customers before, right? As a 20-year-old, like, never would have happened. And it would have gone through like 10 managers before it would see like 10 customers. And so that type of, it was a high, right?
Yeah.
And so then you go to a place like, I was at Microsoft, and makes such an easy target, but and it was a big company, and to make it feel that way, they would do like Hawaiian Shirt Friday and
manufactured
manufactured.
compulsory rituals
It
that
was
make you feel
manufactured
like
rituals, and so we'd have to wear this stupid shirt, and we would go bowling and with people we didn't like, and we're like, I fucking hate you, and I'm wearing a stupid shirt, and I don't want to spend time with you, and so it was like, yeah, Sarah's talking about the waffle party. So in Severance, they have this forced 5-minute like waffle party, and it's like it's just like that, where it's like I hate this, I hate you, I don't want to do this, and that's the thing about imposed fun, like forced fun.
uh let's
So,
tie this back to
yeah.
the
Sorry,
work that you do. No, I love the color because the color is your passion, and that's really,
Yeah.
you bleed for this because this is like you are for organic, sensible policy to build conformity in a way
Yeah.
that enriches and improves and constructively
Yeah.
elevates
Yeah.
the development internally of talents.
But I
Provides
can bring
value.
it home. I can bring it home. So your last question was about flexibility, and we
Right.
can tie that to acceleration. So I talked about startups to a big company, right? Which is acceleration in a manner of speaking. So you were talking about like acceleration versus stewardship, right? And AI is basically a stress test for whatever governance you already have in place. So if your institution is built on moving fast and hope the lawyers are awake, right? AI will just accelerate that. And acceleration is throughput, like more data, more models, faster decisions. And stewardship is the long view. What kind of institution are we becoming by the use of those tools, right? So the real question is accelerate for whom and at whose expense? And so if your AI roadmap makes it harder for frontline workers or affected communities to say, this is wrong, that's not governance, that's optimized dressed up as innovation. Optimization dressed up. And optimization is a form of innovation. It's just not true, like leaps and bounds innovation. And stewardship is not about saying no to technology. It's about designing systems where someone can still say no to a bad use of it and be heard before the damage is done. And I'll give you an example. So the Hawaiian shirt thing, and this is where I'll bring it all home. This is what I do in grad school too. They indulge my anecdotes, but I can bring it all home. So in the startup world, we were all about the customer, very customer centric, very passionate, and an amazing culture, right? All of them were kind of toxic in their own way, but it was kind of still amazing. And then you go to that Microsoft thing, which was super toxic and kind of like performative, right? And you had a product that people it was a necessary evil. I mean, if you remember using Office, it was sort of like, maybe not in your generation, but in the previous generation, it was sort of this fight, right? It was like a product I kind of had to use, but I hated it. And then, but at the time, it was like, it was a company resisting becoming IBM. If you want to look at the culture part of it, right? They were fighting their own journey to bureaucracy. The Hawaiian shirt thing was an example of that. They were getting old. They were getting fat. They were getting complacent. They were getting lazy as a company, right? And kind of say the early 2005, 2008. There were sort of the lost years of Bomber. It's called the lost years. You can look it up. And then and now under Satya, they're trying to find their relevance again through AI. And Satya's really nervous about that. And they're still nervous about becoming IBM, even though they've already become IBM. Does that make sense? Do you even understand the comparison I'm making about IBM?
The confirmation to policies and procedures that they're just so wrapped up in.
Like the stodginess.
I'm not
Is
familiar
that,
with.
is
I'm
that a
not
little
familiar with
too?
that adjective, but I have some
So
secondary feedback
IBM,
in
I'll just
IBM
give
and
you,
how it's very rigorous and you have
yeah.
to
Well, I'll give you a little, like a snap history is that IBM is like over 100-year-old company.
okay.
And when Microsoft started, they wanted to be anything IBM
Anti.
was not.
Right. And now they're looking at their father in the face and they're like, I am you, dad.
I am you. Oh my God, I'm you, right?
Yeah.
And they can't face it. And culturally, they are IBM 50 years ago. And
Gotcha.
IBM is now saying, look at this run fast and break things culture. Shouldn't do it. Shouldn't do it. And they're actually saying very subtly, and it's fucking brilliant. They're saying, maybe you should slow down and think. And they're being that wise statesman. They're taking that sort of statesman approach in their messaging. And it is brilliant. And they're being very subtle about it. And that's what Microsoft should be doing. And that's what I keep writing about. Is like, why aren't you getting smarter? Big nine. Like the big nine should all be using that in their messaging, and they're not. And they haven't woke up because no one wants to be woke. Like all of those are code words. All of those are all of those are like loaded terms to wake up, to think, to critical thinking, to like, those are all become sensitive things and behaviors to slowing down and being a drag on innovation and making the ship date sensitive, right? Whereas some companies are now taking that preventative approach and making it part of their marketing, almost the way that sustainability and CSR did back in the early 2000s. If we were to be this way naturally, we would be inherently more productive, inherently more revenue generating, inherently more trustworthy, inherently more better people. And so IBM is starting to step into that space. And so that's me bringing it home. So that, I think that's the final leg in terms of tying it to kind of that acceleration and stewardship role and kind of bringing us into home base. So there you go.
Do I snap or do I what kind of slam poetry would you prefer?
No,
Uh,
I
no, that
just
was
wanted you to know that I can ramble and tie it.
no. I never had a doubt in no shroud of doubt in my head that you could have done that. Um, what is up with that T-shirt? I'm just curious.
Oh, well, it's just I get distracted easily and I like rocks. I bring rocks home from vacations.
I love it. So people should check out your work. Where do you want to apply your expertise? What kind of outcome would you like to have in the world now that you've gone through these multiple phases of disillusionment and renewed hope and all these things? Where do you want to go?
Um, well, I'm really focused on the stewardship for the 99%. I think the answer lies in the middle. This manifesto is my path through that middle, that walk through the middle, where I'm looking for that. What can we do next step, and kind of where have others gone, and what is possible. And I'm always looking for the path of constructive action. And so the tenets that I'm posting are kind of just that, sort of what has happened and what can we do, and what has happened and what can we do. And so there's always some kind of action. And working on a book, Women in AI, that's going to have kind of a handbook quality to it, with some constructive action that'll come out next year. And I consult on that space. So obviously reach out to me there. And yeah, and read my newsletter and stay in touch. And I'm available for all manner of conversations.
You're gonna have to block me on social media because I'm gonna want to have more dialogues with you. This is awesome. I feel like I'm getting a sneak peek. I feel like I broke into one of your lectures. Awesome.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it was a sneak peek to a lecture.
Dative Works is your
company.
Dative Works is your company. Okay.
Yeah.
Olivia, I see, wants to interact with you to further broaden this thing. She also teaches AI literacy. I'm pretty sure in Norway or Denmark. I'm so sorry, Olivia. You're gonna have to specify what country you're in again. I'm pretty sure it was Denmark. Anyways, thank you all for tuning in, and Christine, I appreciate you for spending the time. Just hang out for a bit. We're just gonna,
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going.